Thank you for tuning in to Spiritual Debriefing, a podcast about Christian men living a Christian life in a very un-Christian world, with your hosts Daniel Meadows, Derek Fisher, Randy Bryson, Jed Harris, and Ray Taggart. Tonight's special guest is Mike Taylor. This is part 2.
This one here about fell off my list here, but since you guys brought it up, because it works real good here, it says, the relationship you have with your children shapes the structure and function of their brain.
That happens at all stages of life. I know most people say, and it's true, the very, very beginning is incredibly important. Like those first 3-4 years, that's like you're building your foundation of your house. And if you mess that up, your house is going to be in tough shape for a while. You can still recover. I'm not saying it's impossible, but you got work to do. But that's and I think a point to remember too is it doesn't always have to be what they want to do. Something, Dan, what you were just saying, Daniel, tell me, what your dad was talking about. My father passed away, almost 10 years ago now, actually over 10 years ago now, and with his health too, he wasn't, even for the 20 some years, he wasn't as what most people would see like a traditional father. I had to almost be more the father to him. When I was a teenager, I was shaving him because he couldn't shave himself. Like that's a totally flipped dynamic. But what I remember, one of the fond memories that just popped into my head was, the Minnesota State Fair. It's this big event. It's huge. It's one of the bigger ones in the country. Not the biggest, but it's a big one. And one of the things he did every single year, the first day of the fair, he would take the day off of work. I think it opened on a Thursday. So he'd take the day off work. We'd get up to the fair at like 6 a.m. because he wanted to be up there to see, the cattle coming in and all the farm stuff. And because he was a farmer, he wanted to see all that. And he'd drag me and my brother, and kids don't like getting up at 6 a.m. and going into the town to go to the fair, but sitting down and having breakfast at the, whatever breakfast place with all the farmers and all that type of stuff, and just connecting with him.
It's called a cafe.
Yeah, probably is.
I don't know what y'all called it up there, but it's cafe.
I'm sure it was.
Here.
I'm sure it was.
Yeah.
Because again, I was too young to even remember exactly what the place was, but it was at the fair. It's the only place open, and it's all the people who are like the bones of the fair are there having breakfast at that point. There's none of the crowds. There's none of the other people. None of the tourists are there, and I just remember those times, and it wasn't something I wanted to do. It was something he wanted to do, and then we'd spend the entire day at the fair, doing all the fun stuff and all the rest of it as well. But I remember the breakfasts, and that sticks with me.
Yeah. Well, that was like going up to the firehouse. My dad was fire chief, and at first I was like, oh, I gotta go back up here again after school. But after a while, I wound up loving it. And I think that's why I did 6 years in the fire service, because of it. But, it's something I wound up loving to do because of the time that we just spent sitting up there and learning different things, at first it started out as not something I really wanted to go do. But
being dragged up there.
Yeah. But it turned into something that I loved getting to go do. He'd pick me up at school in his fire chief's car, and then we'd go up to the firehouse. That was the coolest thing to me, that I got to be picked up in a car with lights and sirens to go sit.
Almost all kids love lights and sirens.
Yeah, they do. So
that was Harmony's favorite part, actually. So we took her to the state fair when she was real little, and we were there late because my wife actually played a show there. So we did music, then we watched another band, and we actually were there when the fair closed. So it was probably like almost 10, 11 o'clock at night, super late. And, Harmony was in her stroller most of the day. She was okay, but I swear she lit up at night because all of a sudden all the people are gone, and now all the trucks full of food and sodas and beer and everything come rolling down the lanes, and they're all lit up at night, and she was just pointing at every one of them going by. This is the coolest part of the fair.
Food parade.
Yep. She was, look at that big truck. Look at that big truck.
Well, Mike, I had one for you just from your little story you had from your little one there. But it says children learn more from what you are, more than what you teach.
Absolutely. We're the example setters, and sometimes we are positive examples, and sometimes we think we're positive examples and we're not. I think I've shared before, and maybe last week I talked about probably the most eye-opening thing that happened was my son, who's currently living on the streets now, told me, I guess he was probably 14, 15 years old, out on the step going into the shed, and to this day I don't know why he said it, but he looked at me just as sincere as can be and said, "Dad, you're just a big hypocrite." And he was referring to my Christian walk, and I don't really know what I was doing or what he saw at the time, but something in my life at that time was not the example he needed to see. And so we have to be real careful about watching our anger, watching the comments that we make, how we treat our spouses, how we treat our children, our other children, because we're being watched all the time. I just know that as a Christian, I've been approached by non-Christians a couple of times referring to my Christian walk, fortunately in a positive way, but they're watching and they will remember and they will point out to you real quick, and it'll make you upset because I was upset. I don't know how I reacted. I don't remember how I reacted. I just know my heart was pierced when he said that. And I had to kind of go back and do some self-examining and self-evaluation to figure out what was I doing as a parent that was setting such a negative example, at least in his eyes, in my life. And it took me time to go back into the Word and back into prayer, because during that time I was so busy at the church as the deacon and teaching and all the committees and so forth. I was so busy working at church, I wasn't working for the Lord, and obviously he saw that.
So if you could go back and change one thing, and it doesn't have to be just one, but if you could go back and change something, especially since the other four guys here have daughters, what would you change raising a daughter or your sons?
Well, it's not a fair question to my daughters, because I was very blessed with both my daughters. My oldest daughter, we used to just kind of pick at her because she just literally slept, ate, and sang, because she'd go in her bedroom and sing, and she sang at church all the time. She was a good student. One of the things that all three of my children that responded back to me said is that we put way too much pressure on them for their grades. That's the one element that they remember. My oldest one, it just came natural to them. The other two underneath there, they all graduated high rankings in their classes, but we punished them extensively for not getting a good grade, which was wrong. Yeah. Looking back, and then my other daughter was the one that was killed in the car accident. She was absolutely not a problem. She was as studious as could be. She graduated from high school with an associate's degree. So I think that if I could go back in time and make any kind of corrections, I'd spend more time talking with my kids from a very early age. I think, Ray, you're on target with Harmony, just with talking to her and having good conversations. And it's never too late to have those conversations, because I have those conversations with them now that they're older, but I really wish I could rewind the clock and really get into their heads and say, evaluate me as a dad. Tell me what I need to do. You're not always going to agree with my choices. You're not always going to agree with the discipline. You're always going to know that I do it in love, and that's one of the things that all three of them did indicate, that they knew that I did it out of love. But I really wish I got to know my kids better and not just simply knew they were my kids.
You know, I've said this before too, and here's something that we kind of recently changed, and it kind of hits on what you said is, it's almost to the point where we almost lower our expectations a little bit. You know, like you said, that, you know, these kids have to get straight A's and they got to do this, and we punish them for not getting this. And I've told you this, Jed, and this is what we've kind of done a little bit different is, we kind of set our kids on pedestals. And when they mess up, man, we're there. I mean, we're like, why are you messing up? And why are you doing this? Well, we're kind of changing a little bit on lowering that expectation a little bit. And I've heard this many times, and many parents have said that, is, what are the things that you would have changed? And it's almost to that aspect of, I would have lowered my expectations a little bit. They're not going to be perfect. And this kind of goes into my little pet peeve, and I don't want to change the subject, but it is about kids. Sometimes we let kids dictate how we parent. And that's one of my pet peeves right now.
Explain that.
Because we're letting the kids make choices where we still need to be the parent. And it's almost to a point where they're almost doing whatever they want to do. And for instance, we have some of that situation is going on a little bit, and we got to set the ground rules and saying, I'm going to be your parent. I am the parent. I am going to make the rules. And we talk about the love. We talk about the relationship. We talk about all the stuff that we have been talking about. Very important things. I think one of the other important things is that we still have to be the parent. We still have to be in charge. We still have to set those ground rules. And I think the kids can't dictate what they think is right. What they think that we need to do is be better parents. And I'm trying to get to the point, but I can't get it all out. But it's almost to the point where parents are almost sometimes giving up and allowing them to just say, okay, that's okay, yep. Not lowering the expectation so much that they're going to be on the bad road.
Yeah.
But lowering them enough to say, hey, I know that you make mistakes. I know you're going to mess up. I know you're going to fail at things. But not letting them dictate what they're going to, I guess, parent, trying to parent us.
I've heard that, and I almost fell into this too, and because my wife and I were in the kind of the new age movement, and there's a lot of push there in new age, new thinking, new schooling to be like, okay, what do you think your punishment should be?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
What would be good for you? And that might actually work for some kids. Some kids might be self-actualized enough to be like, well, this is what I deserve. But I flipped, and my wife right away was like, we're not doing that. Don't do that. That's dumb. I'm like, okay. She calls it like it is. But one of the things that I've done, and and for right or wrong, but a lot of times, I punish my daughter, and she'll be all pouty and sad or crying or whatever, and then I'll just ask her, I say, do you think that I punished you too much? Do you think you don't deserve what you just got? And to a T, she's always like, yeah, like I deserve it. I know, I'm right. Yeah, I don't get that cookie because I did this, or I don't get to play video games for a week because I did that, and just giving her that gut check after I've punished her to be like, do you think that was too far? Do you think that was too much? Do you think you deserve these things back? And whether she actually believes it or not, she's just saying it because she thinks I want to hear it. She does think about it for a minute. She goes, oh yeah, you're right.
I did mess up.
Yeah, she's like, I made a mistake. I do deserve to have a punishment, and this is what it is.
Yeah, and I see that, Mike, your wheels are turning there. What?
Yeah, one of the things that Ray just mentioned is that sometimes we assign a discipline, a punishment, and it's so short-termed, and for them it doesn't really affect them. It just, this too shall pass and I'll go. It has to be, as Ray said, earned back. It needs to be applied. It needs to hurt to a point where, but probably all of us have played a game with somebody who changed the rules in the middle of the game, and you get frustrated because it was like, wait, that wasn't the rule.
Yeah, Wyatt hates that. Wyatt hates
I say we all have kids. They did that when they were little every time.
I want you to think about for a moment our children, because sometimes we as parents change the rules in the middle of the game. And we need to be, if we're going to apply consistency in our home, we need to have clear choices, clear consequences for those choices, and pure application of the if they have to suffer the consequences. And it may be something like you've got daughters that are driving, and it may be that, all right, you're going, because you were supposed to be home at 11 o'clock, and I'm going to give you a 15-minute fudge time. But after that, for every minute, here's the consequence. You're going to lose your driving privileges for a week. But I got a job. Hey, if I only had one means of transportation and it broke down and I had to go to work, I'd figure out a way to go. So if it causes you to get an Uber, if it causes you to have somebody come pick you up, that's the consequence. You need to earn that back, but we need to make sure that those rules are fully in place beforehand. Oftentimes we come up with these creative disciplines for our children after the fact, and we usually do it out of an emotion.
We play defense. Yeah. We wind up playing defense. And
So are you saying that fudge time's like my time, like 10:45 instead, not 11:45?
Well, and again, that consistency that they know that there is there's no backing off of it. If it's a week, it's not 6 days.
it is.
It's a week.
Oh, they know.
Yeah.
They know.
Yeah, they know they don't call my bluff. I'm not bluffing. If I say it's going to happen, it's going to happen. Yeah. And I make sure it does happen. You know, if I tell you to, if I can tell you to do something, and if you don't do that certain thing, here's the consequences, and they don't do it, it's going to be consistent. And my consequences are going to be consistent throughout both kids, and they both know that. And, and sometimes, as us as parents too, I mean, we show this love, we show this care, we and I talked about this a little bit earlier, and I've talked to Judd with you this multiple times. We try to get our kids things that we've never had as kids, right?
Right.
And that has been something that I have been working on a lot, because that's what we wanted to do, was provide for them for the things that we'd never had the opportunities, or the itemized things, or stuff like that. We didn't really show them that, life is going to be hard, and here's a quote that John Roberts said, which is the Chief of Justice, and this nails it on the head, I think, because sometimes as parents, we want to cuddle them, we want to hold them, we want to protect them. We need them to be safe. We don't want to hurt their feelings. We don't want their feelings to get hurt. We don't want them to feel loneliness. We don't want to feel this, right? But with this quote, when I heard this and I read it, and I'm like, you know what? This is so true. And this is sometimes I think I want to do, with our kids, and because he wrote this for a middle age or his middle or junior high graduation for his kids, or junior high graduation. He wrote this. And he says, from time to time in years to come, I hope you will be treated unfairly, so that you will come to know the value of justice. I hope that you will suffer betrayal, because that will teach you the importance of loyalty. Sorry to say, but I hope you will be lonely from time to time, so that you don't take friends for granted. I wish you bad luck again from time to time, so that you will be conscious of the role of the chance in life, and understand that your success is not completely deserved, and that the failure of others is not completely deserved either. And when you lose, and you will from time to time, I hope every now and then your opponent will gloat over your failure. It is a way for you to understand the importance of sportsmanship. I hope you'll be ignored, so that you know the importance of listening to others. And I hope that you will have just enough pain to learn compassion. And whether I wish these things or not, they're going to happen. And whether you benefit from them or not will depend on your ability to see the message in your misfortunes. When I looked over that, I think almost it's like teaching, and that was a question for you, Mike, that I had for you is, have you ever taught your child tough love?
Oh, absolutely.
And I think sometimes that this applies to them too, because this is what the world is going to be about. And as us as parents, we got to teach them this is the world. It is a cruel world. And sometimes we have to not just hold on to them so much and protect them and say, oh, I don't want your feelings to get hurt. I don't want you to feel loneliness. I don't want you to feel all this. But I think sometimes we're taking that away from them, because as us as growing up and when we did, we felt some of those things, and when we still do as adults, we still feel maybe that loneliness, or or somebody beats you on something and they are throwing it in your face. How do we learn from those? And I think this is a time that we teach our kids these things. It's going to just help them more in this world, and we know how cruel this world is.
Well, me and Haley had a talk the other day, and I don't know exactly why it come up, but I told Haley, I said, you're at the age that, yes, you're going to be able to make your own decisions. And I said, I want you to make your own decisions now, because I want you to deal with the consequences of your decision. I said, I'm your parent. I'll be your parent until the day I'm gone. And I said, I'm going to sit there and I'm going to say, that wasn't right, or I'm going to try to straighten it out. But I said, I don't want to make that decision for you. A good friend of mine, Richard Nevels, lives down the road from me. His grandkids, I love the way he handles his grandkids. He's got bukus of them, but the ones I've been around are 4 to 8, 12 years old. Anytime they're around, Papa, can I go do this? You can do anything you want. Just realize that there's a consequence for what you do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So they learn.
That's been my saying for years.
Yeah.
You can do anything once as long as you're willing to suffer the consequences. But Derek, I think that you're right, that because we have this mindset that, we didn't have, so we need to provide for our kids. Mm-hmm. We have inadvertently, if you will, created entitled children.
Yes.
We have, and we in the school system we see that all the time. That it gets to the point, well, I'm supposed to have that. I need that because someone else. You haven't earned it. You haven't done anything to do it. Right. I just know that for my children, we helped them pay for their first car. Once they had their car, they took control of everything. They paid their I didn't pay half their insurance. They paid their insurance. They paid their gas. They paid their repairs. If they broke down on the road and they needed a tow, they paid the tow. We didn't take care of the bill for them. Oh, that's mean. You're just not taking care of your kids. No, you just have to understand that this is real world, and you're going to be out there, and you need to prepare. So you got a job. You need to make sure you're setting money aside, so when you break down, you got money to take care of that. Mm-hmm. Or I could just simply go help them out again and help them out again. And then every time they get into a problem, what are they expecting?
Mm-hmm.
Help them out.
Help out. And if you don't, you're the mean, nasty parent that doesn't love them. And you really do love them by teaching them you are responsible for your own choices, your actions. And we're supposed to do that as parents, to build that character in them, to be able to make those kinds of choices.
Yeah, they got to have the skin in the game.
Right.
And it's funny because my buddy Andy called me too, because his son is driving now, and they got him a car and this, and he asked me what I did for Autumn, or what's her skin in the game, and he talked to my other buddy Chris, and trying to get opinions and on how to have them be responsible, and what is their skin in the game on that, and ours is, and she's worked at the ranch. She doesn't have to prove to me that she's a hard worker. I mean, I know she works hard, and she works hard all the time. But I told Andy, I says, our number one goal was for her driving was her grades. I says, your job right now is to do good in school. That's your job. And we'll pay for certain things because that's your payment of you doing that job at school. And so, you know, it was a little different. You know, he got a different opinion from Chris, and you know that you know some people paid half, or you know his kids paid half, and what he did was, you know, you owe this much money, and Chris would put all this money away, and then when they graduated, and says, here you go, here's money to start off with, because you know now you have skin in the game, and sometimes we have to do that because we are producing entitlement. And that's how I felt. I'm like, our kids are spoiled.
Yeah.
And they are. And that's the thing that we have to stop as parents and realize this world is going to be tough, and we grew up in this world, and we're still in this world. And I listened to a podcast on the No Sanity Required, Brody Holloway, and here's his little quote, and it was so funny. I told Autumn this before we came here too. I says, you know, it's almost, we don't want our kids to do tough things. And he says, I'm not going to take all the weights out of the gym, because that's the whole purpose of a gym, are the weights. Hard work, right?
Yeah.
You go to the gym to work out because that's hard work. And for our kids, sometimes what we're doing is we're taking those weights away from them and going, it's okay, I'm going to lift these weights for you. We can't do that.
You go back just a few generations ago, and by the time you were 16, 17, 18, you're like, I am leaving to start my own thing because I'm an adult now. It wasn't a help me mom, help me dad. It was I'm going out, and yeah, maybe it was going to college but again, go a couple generations beyond that. That wasn't really in the plans. I mean, it was, you were chomping at the bit to create your own thing, to create your own success. And I'm not saying that about any of our kids per se, but I think that's a society issue right now, is that it is trying to provide for them so much. They are then entitled, and they're like, okay, what are you going to help me do now? Like, how are you going to help me afford to go to school? How are you going to help me afford to buy a house after I do that? And how are you going to help me this and that? And it's again, I'm not blaming any one thing in particular. I think it's a cyclical thing that happens with societies as we get more affluent, as we get more things, as we have more wealth, we are able to do these things. But there's a downside to it too.
Well, there is, and we remind our kids all the time that, you know, when we first got married, and I think everyone around this table can feel the same way, is that we were broke. Like when we first got married, and that's what we said. I said we went to the dollar store all the time. We had the dollar menu at McDonald's. We were broke. And I said our first cars as being married, they were donated to us because it went through like 2 generations, and then we got the leftover car. They gave it to us for free because now it had 200,000 miles on it, and we had to put transmissions in like every car that we got. But the reason why we're at the spot that we're at right now is because we worked hard and we got to where we wanted to be in life. And we've almost taken that away from our kids.
Yep. That's right.
Is they don't realize, because a lot of people do that, is they only see you now. They don't see what you've gone through or who you were or what took you to this place to where you're at now. They just see you as now in this moment. And that's what the kids do too, because when we were doing that and hustling and working hard, they were small and babies. They didn't get to see that. And now they see this life going, well, mom and dad make good money and they got a nice house and they got this. Well, these kids are in the microwave generation where they want things now, where your generation, Mike, and the end of I think we've kind of fallen that generation, is that crockpot generation. It takes time and hard work to get where we're at now. And as us as parents, is we're taking that hard work and that we're taking that away from them, because we're going, here you go, here are the things that I never had, and we're spoiling them so much that we're taking that away from them.
Well, that was like, we owned an ambulance company, and it floors people when I tell people I started working for the ambulance company at 16, because that's unheard of. Like, you have to be 18 to work on the ambulance, right?
Well, because Daddy... I'm just
but that was, yeah, because we owned it.
Because he was entitled.
He's got a master's.
But that was how I paid for like my first truck.
Right.
Like Dad bought me my first truck, but I went and worked
Right.
every day after school,
You earned it.
after practice, washing 5 ambulances, making sure they were all stocked, cleaning the crew quarters, every day until I was 18. To then I could finally start working on the ambulance. But I mean, that was it. That was how, I had a pretty decent truck for a teenager, but I busted my tail
Right.
to get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I started when I was 14, just doing anything I
Hauling
could.
cattle at 14.
I was hauling cattle at 14. That's true. Hauling cattle, and I was trading cattle. And probably by the time I was 17, I probably had over 150 head of cows.
right.
Yeah.
I was lucky enough to have parents that had land that didn't have cattle at the time, so it worked.
But I mean, and when we're talking about all of this right now, and and I appreciate you, Mike, coming in and doing this and giving us some of this wisdom, that we look at this right now and we see hard work for us as parents.
Oh yes, it's a different time.
Because we're talking about the love, we're talking about building a relationship, we're talking about spending time with our kids, showing our kids tough love, and we have papers here and lists of things that we need to do as parents, and going, what's the right way? But really, after talking to you, Mike, and all of this stuff is it's work, and we got to work at it as parents.
Trial and error.
Yep.
It's a 24/7 all the time, and there's no right answers, and there's no secret formula for one child that fits all.
Every child's different.
Every single child's got a different personality. Society's different. We didn't have the kind of fear when our children went someplace for safety purposes. Our environment was safer back then. So you all have to deal with not only allowing your children some freedom to go out, but then you also have to have the concerns about the choices they make with the environment that they're currently living in, which makes it even that much more difficult. But you do have to. One of the quick. When do you let go? When
do you let go?
When do you go? There's a point in time where they have developed over the course of their time a trust, hopefully, and if they haven't violated that trust, and I know that in some cases we've got some situations even in this room where we've had some that have violated the trust. And once you violate that trust, it takes forever to rebuild it, and it's a hard thing to do. And but they have to understand they are responsible for restoring the trust. That it's not your responsibility. They have to make the choices, and they have to understand the consequences for their choices because they lost that trust. But if they've got it, you said your children are pretty good kids and you're pretty well trustworthy. I know my oldest one, Timothy, when he graduated from high school, we gave him permission to go out, and he didn't have to be back until 3 o'clock. That was his curfew for graduation night. He went to a party at the lake, having a good time. Some kids brought some beer. He didn't feel comfortable. He left. He went to a house that was having a graduation party, hung around there for a while. Somebody brought beer. He ended up coming home at 10:45. He said, everywhere I went, they were drinking beer, Dad. I didn't want to be around it. I was so proud of him that time, for him to make those kind of choices, to know that we established that criteria. I had trust that when he said he was going to go someplace, he went someplace. When my daughter said she was going to go someplace. But in today's society, you got to provide that opportunity for them. But again, as I said earlier, there has to be those consequences. I've established a rule. This is it. I'm trusting you. If you can follow that and fulfill that trust, we're going to have a great relationship. If you mess it up, we're going to have issues.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
I'm going to slide this in real quick before
slide
we
it
move
in.
on, because I didn't know where this was going to fit in. It's perfect for this situation. It's not what you do for your children, but what you have taught them to do for themselves that will make them successful human beings.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
That's true.
yeah.
Yeah, because even I think me and Jed are in the same boat right now. Our daughters right now in 4 months, they're out of high school. They're on their own. I mean, really, I mean, they got these goals and these dreams and these ambitions. And right now we've been slowly letting her make her own decisions, like you
Yes.
said, right?
Yep.
You know, even to the point where we could talk about church, you know, on Wednesday night. Hey, I want to go to a youth group with my friends. Okay. Let me see what kind of church you're you know, what you're picking, or what why do you want to go there? What's going on? And, you know, I said, I'll let you make that decision. You know, you want to go try that? Go ahead. You know, and it's just little stuff here and there, just little simple decisions.
Little simple decisions, and you just got to let them.
Right.
to
And like
make
right
that
now,
right.
this weekend, she's house sitting. She's never spent the night on house sitting, and it's for Natania's sister.
Okay.
And so, you know, there's a horse and a donkey and, you know, a dog and all that stuff to take care of. But through this entire time of having her, she has never actually stayed at somebody's house to house sit it. She's gone there to take care of stuff and just came back home. And we did the same thing. Here are the rules, right? This is not our house. There is no friends over. There is no nothing, you know. And you know, we got to set those ground rules. But we, at the same point, we're kind of letting go a little bit.
Absolutely.
And letting them see what kind of decisions they're going to make as of right now, because we're still here.
Yeah.
Right here.
Right
you know, we
here.
could still boom, boom, boom. But in 4 months, they're going to be making their own decisions, being in college, being, you know, like your daughter's going to Iowa. My daughter's going to Iowa for the summer on you know, being an assistant horse wrangler at a church camp and going to the university. And, you know, it's like, here's a time that, you know, like you did, you set all these examples and all of these things that you did for your kids. And now you get to see if you made that impact in their lives.
Yep. And I think if you can get them to the point where they know that you know they are going to fail.
Oh, yeah.
And then to the best thing to do, and again, I try to impress this upon my daughter all the time when she makes a mistake. I said, you know, what did you learn from that? And come to me. Come talk to me. I will help you. I may also include some chastisement with that help, but I will always be there to help you, you know? And I don't know if your parents said the same things mine did, but I remember when I was a teenager, you know, one of the things my mom always said, she says, you know, I know you're going to go out, you're going to do dumb things. So it still is longer ago for me than you might think too. But they, you know, she says, if you're ever in trouble, call me. She's like, I might be upset with you, but I'm never going to not come and help you. I'm never going to not come to be there for you. And you know what I was going to mention earlier, that because we were talking about how it's so different for our kids now than it was for us. I'm like, do you think any of our kids know what a garden hose tastes like?
Right.
Because
My
I say
kids
that,
do.
and
I
you
make
know,
sure.
you exactly know what garden hose
Hang on,
water
wait,
tastes like.
The water out of the garden hose
Yes.
or the garden hose itself?
Isn't it the same? What's the difference?
It's really good.
Yeah,
Like, it's good on a hot summer day.
I would bet if for sure, I don't know, Daniel, if your parents did this, but for the rest of us, I'm sure there was the go outside, don't come home till the sun goes
It
down.
was-
Ours were the street lights.
Yeah,
it
or till the
was-
streetlights
no,
come on.
it was-
I'm going to lock the door. Don't come back.
That's exactly what my mom was. Yeah, like on the summer or the weekends, 8 a.m. You're out the door. Door's locked. Oh, it's lunchtime. Here, I'll open the window. Here's your PB&J. There's the water. See you later.
Leave me alone.
Like that, I mean, that was it. I mean, yeah. So yeah, no, I grew up that way. Don't worry.
You're good.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's good.
But kids
I grew up
nowadays,
that way.
they can't. You
No, they
can't do
can't.
that.
They
You'd probably
don't-
get your kids taken away if you
we
did
were-
that.
Well, yeah, they don't want them to get hurt. They don't want them to, you know, feel failure. They don't want them to feel all this stuff. And that's how we're learning this, through failure, and we still do as adults.
So I have a question for all of you that are raising children right now.
Oh, that's not me.
You can respond.
Please step outside the room. This is for
How do you respond to your children when they say, you're making me go to church, and when I get older and I get out of this house, I'm done because you keep making me go to church?
Harmony loves church, so I'll bow out of this one.
Well, you know what? And that was a reverse question, because I had that on the list I was going to ask you here, Mike, was, you know,
So I asked
why?
it first.
Yeah, because it is a fine line too. Because you know, that's how I grew up. It was Sunday morning, it was Sunday night, it was Wednesday night, it was church camp, it was Awanas, it was so much church that I guess it really changed for me is when I became an adult. Really, not just coming out of the house. I still, you know, because right out of high school, I worked a pipeline. And so I was always working, and then we finished a job in Arizona, and then we were off to Vegas. I was on my own, right out of high school, working the pipeline. And so there was no church there, but I actually went to a couple of churches there and just to try to meet people, you know, and because I was like, I want to meet good people, and that's what I grew up in was church. And I kind of went away from it for a little bit at a short time of my life, and then came back to it. And right now, for our kids, is let me see if I can put this the right way. Because we get into arguments sometime about Sunday morning, about hey, you know, we're going to Sunday school, but you know, and they're I'm tired, I want to sleep in. Why can't we just ever have a break? But my dad growing up was, I don't care about your excuses. You're going to church. Where is that fine line that where we're pushing our kids so much into church that we're pushing them away? Because there could, you know, I've heard a couple stories of some people, some folks that were deacons and that were a lot of things in church and leadership in church. And now their kids are growing, and now they're wishing that they can get their kids back into church. So it's a great question. That's why I wanted to ask you, Mike, but I know you reversed it on me. And I'm trying to find that fine line where I want to show you the importance of church. I want to show you the importance of Jesus. But I don't want to show it in so much that I'm pushing them away from it. Because sometimes, Daniel, because sometimes even as an adult,
yeah,
I feel the same way. And I'm going to be very honest with you. You know, sometimes I'm like, how much church do I need? I mean, we're doing Wednesday night, we're doing Sunday morning, Sunday school, Sunday night men's, we're doing a podcast where, you know, am I getting burnt out? No. But I'm just saying, you know, where am I, you know, when is it so much that you're pushing away? And maybe you guys can help me on that, because that was my question to Mike and he reversed it.
When God tells you it's too much.
So I preached a sermon one time, and I started it with, don't raise your children in church. And that kind of got some puzzles. Because you're right, Derek, we push church so much. Mm-hmm, and I think of, like, me and my siblings, and as far as I can think of, I'm the only one that goes to church still. And so I started with, don't raise your kids in church, and paused to let it sink in. I said, raise them in Christ. Mm-hmm. Raise your kids to understand the relationship with Jesus over the relationship with a building church like what we go to. Because here's the thing, is the church is not just coming up here, right? The church is the body of believers. And so it's not necessarily that we have to push them to every function that we have at church, whether that's Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, once a month fellowship, Saturday morning breakfast, you know. And that's where I think that we cause our kids, because I see the shift in youth groups is I see about 17, 18-year-olds, junior, seniors in high school leave from the church for a little bit. And even right after graduation, because they've been pushed in drugs so much that we raise them in church and we forgot to show them what a relationship with Jesus looks like.
That's it. That's what I, kind of think too, is now when I sit back too and look, when I go to church so much, is that because I want to? It's not because I'm forced to go here Sunday morning or Sunday night or do all this, because it's because I want to. Yeah. And it's at building that relationship with Jesus. And now, you nailed it. I really think that's one of the answers to that question, is when our children build that relationship with Jesus, we're not forcing them to go to church. They're going, hey, Dad, I want to go to church. That's how Wyatt is right now, because Wyatt's.
But right there that is one of the biggest, is God gave us a choice.
Yeah.
So they have to make a choice too. We can't make the choice for them. So that's one of the biggest answers right there too, is they have to choose to be here. They have to choose that relationship. We don't get to determine it because in the Bible, we have a job to teach them the ways.
Yes.
But if they don't accept it, we done our job. Doesn't mean we have to quit our job, but we done our job. So it can't be held up against us for trying to do what we're supposed to do, and they choose not to do it.
Well, it's funny. I have a Bible verse that goes right with this, Deuteronomy 5:29. Oh, that their hearts would be inclined to fear and keep my commands always, so that it might go well with them and their children forever. Right? That's all God hopes, you know. And if we could just work that out, and I have it now. Harmony loves church, as I said. She was so bummed when she was sick for 2 weeks and couldn't come. And every time, can I go this Wednesday? I'm going to be able to go this Sunday. You know, she reminds me. So this is fifth Sunday, Dad. There's going to be fifth Sunday fellowship after church. She's so excited
She's a
about
Baptist.
it. She is so excited about it. But and I am glad it's that way. I don't know if it'll always be that way. I hope that it will, and it's something that is different for me now because I'm the same way, Derek. I come because I love to be here. Right. I love to be here with the body of Christ, with the people that are here, and I think that's something that everyone, if someone's listening and you're like, I don't enjoy going to church, maybe you gotta find a different church because it's not the building, it's not necessarily the pastor, it's the people.
It's the people.
If you find a church with good people that treat you like family, that you
That's
can
friends.
connect with, then you're going to enjoy being there. And then again, that's why Harmony likes coming too, because she has friends here. She has friends here that are good friends, better than she gets in other places, because she's got friends in some of the other things we do too. But they don't, I've noticed the interactions. They don't treat her the same. They don't talk to her the same. There's just something different between good, godly raised children and how they treat each other and interact with each other than the children in the world who treat each other.
Let me ask y'all this question, and this is for all 5 of y'all, and then listeners at home, if you want to ponder this. Do your kids, or did your kids, see an importance of your relationship with Jesus over your busyness at the church?
I'm working on that actually, because like I said, two podcasts ago, maybe last podcast, I'm trying to make sure Harmony sees me reading the Bible more. She sees me doing the stuff for Sunday night men's ministry and what I need to, read. I'm not doing that when I'm not, at night when she's sleeping or before she gets up. She sees me doing it, and I tell her, I got to go read my Bible. I got to work on the questions, and I got to work on the class stuff that I'm going to do. But the other step to it is I'm trying to include her some more in that too. If I'm just going to be reading the Bible to study and get ready for class, well then why don't I read it with her? Why don't I talk to her about the questions I'm trying to answer and I'm going through and
You probably get better answers than what we give you.
She does give good answers.
She does. She really does. So it's something I'm recently trying to get her more involved in my Bible study too. It can be, and it should be a family time. And you go again. I could always say you go back 100 years, and that was there wasn't just the Bible on the coffee table because it was there. It was there because you actually sat down and everybody read it for a while. And you're like, okay, you're going to read a chapter, or you're going to read this section, and then Mom's going to read the next section, and I'm going to read the next section, and that's missing. Unfortunately, it's just something we don't get to do. But I'm trying to bring some of it back. But man, the world fights you constantly.
So Autumn had an interview for that Bible camp from the director, whoever it was. And she told me how the interview went. And one of the questions to her was, how is your family? How is your relationship with your parents? And she answered him and told me the answer. And she goes, I couldn't hope for better parents. And my dad is always trying to do the right thing. And so maybe, that relationship that I have, I don't show as much as the Bible reading that I should. And that's probably maybe part of, my failure. But she can see my morals that I have, and the way I stand on things is that it is based on Christ and doing the right things and helping people and always trying to help other people and put their needs before my needs. And so when she said that to him, I was like, maybe that's what you're seeing in me. And that's what my foundation on Christ is doing for me is trying to do the right things all the time and helping people. So not per se that she sees me read the Bible every day or sees me do those things, but now she can witness the actions that I'm taking.
She sees the fruit
Yep.
that's being produced.
Right.
Yeah.
That's just me. What about you, Mike?
Repeat the question.
The reason why I asked the question is because when I look at those responses or those comments from our children that you're going to drive me away from church, we sometimes think about those in terms of when a teenager says that. What if your 7-year-old says that? I don't want to go to church. Does the rules change at that point? And if you think about it, those rules will change because you'll say, well, a 7-year-old, no, you're going to church. Now you're 16 years old, you don't have to go to church, or we're going to let you make your choices. And the way I look at it from Scripture is to tell my children, you are my gift that God gave me, and He gave me a command to train you up. And I'm going to do that to the very best of my ability by setting the standards in my home, in my character, in my moral values, how I conduct myself. And you're not going to forsake the assembly while you're in my home. Now, when you get out of my home and you choose to go out and not go to church, you are not going to guilt me into feeling bad because you don't go to church.
Right.
I'm not going to force my faith on you, but I am going to do what God commanded me to do, and that is to train you up in the way that He used to be, that you're in the training and the admonition of the Lord. You're not going to like it. It's one of those tough love things. You're not going to like it. You're going to bow up. You're going to get upset. You're going to come to church with an attitude. I'm sorry about that. Most of the time, when your kids come to church with an attitude and they get around the other kids, they're okay.
Yeah, it's all gone.
It's just a matter. It's just a matter. And so I don't buy the argument to, well, I'm going to let them choose and give them the warm and fuzzy. That's one of those, to me, that's a non-negotiable event in my house. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like my son who was living with his girlfriend and had a child. They came to visit on the way to Florida, and when they were in my house, they slept in different bedrooms. Dad, we've got a kid. I don't care. In my house, my standard is you're not sleeping together. He was upset. He stayed a couple of days and left. He understood because he knew that was the expectation. He knew that was scriptural. And so there are just certain times, in my opinion, that you're just simply saying, I'm not going to force you to become a Christian. I'm not going to force you to believe the way I believe. I'm going to try to set that example as you're growing up. But while you're in my house, these are my standards. These are my expectations. These are non-negotiable. And we all, I'm sure all of us have in our homes some non-negotiables as you can't cross this line. That's it. And for me, that when the church was open, you're going to church. Now, do they have to go to every activity? Do they have to? No, not necessarily. If they don't want to go to a Sunday night fellowship or a special event or a band coming in or a gospel group coming in, that's fine if they're old enough to stay at home and we find a sitter. But they're not supposed to forsake the assembly of Christians, and they're coming to church. And I've had to deal with that with all of my children. I've heard it from my children. You made us go, I'm not going. Some of my children go to church, some of them don't. But that's not on me. That is not my responsibility. That's their choice. And I'm not going to take the blame or not feel guilty because they made that choice. They have the foundation. They know what they're supposed to do. They have to make the choice, just like all of us have to do when we come to know Christ as our Lord and Savior. It has to be an individual choice. So That's my story. I'm sticking to it.
Yeah, no, that was good. I mean, it's based on Scripture. I mean, that's and you're right. That's our commandment. That's what we need to do for our kids.
I think Randy and Mike shared notes again.
No, I was just going to share a little story here because a couple weeks ago during the wrestling match, I can't remember. She may have been upset. I don't know. But this quote here, I told her, I said, I'm going to bring this up in the podcast, call it Haley's quote here. But the quote says, the way you talk to our children becomes their inner voice. And Haley's story is I was out there wrestling, Dad, and I was going to do this, but your voice was in my head to tell me not to do that. And I said, well, what did I say? Because I don't remember saying it. She said, I didn't do it, and look what happened. I won, And I was like, well, but we had that conversation a while ago, too. It's one of those deals. She's like, I can't do anything now without having your voice in my head telling me that's wrong, that's right. That's a good idea. That's not bad, And I'm like, I wish you'd share some of this with me because I don't know which direction we're going. But it's awesome to hear her tell me that.
You're doing your job.
Well, sometimes, but I think we all touched on it at some point that we are involved in our children. That they know
They're watching.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it might be a test for you right now to see how firm you're going to stand. And if she comes back at you, I'm not going to church or not this or not that. That's what I'm saying. They're going to test us at some point. And they know what the answer is going to be. They just want to know if you're going to do it or not. Mm-hmm. So I don't have any doubt right here that I'm going to go through all that. But she's going to have my voice in her head now that I know that's there. So other than that, I mean, what was your question? Because I was going off his. I was going off his a while ago.
Blame me, huh?
Yeah, blame Mike.
Baby.
You don't even
No.
Yeah, you
remember.
don't even remember now.
No, I do.
Because I did have an answer.
Because it was off of that, don't raise your kids in church, raise them in Christ. And so the question was, do your kids see your relationship with Christ as more important than your relationship with
church, I think.
with church?
Yeah, with church.
Something like and I asked that not to make anybody feel guilty about their
Oh, here comes my
typical Baptist pastor over here. Make you feel guilty. Pose a question. No, I didn't ask that to make you feel guilty over whether or not your kids see you in the Bible, reading, whatever. I asked that because I thought back, and I remember being at church every time the doors were open because I was a deacon's kid. We were there every time. Every night of revival, we were there. Every Sunday night, we were there. Every Sunday morning, we were there. Every Wednesday night, we were there. Every Bible quiz, we participate, and so we were there. I was there. Every visitation, I was there. I was probably at church this same amount of time I was at school. I mean, that's just. But I never saw my parents in their relationship with Jesus. I never saw them read the Bible. I never saw them pray. I saw my dad prepare for Sunday school or Bible study, but I never saw him develop his own relationship. Mm-hmm. And so that's where that question came from, because I was like, I don't want to be that way, but
my answer to that, I guess I could say I don't think I've reached that point yet, because Mike will attest to this. Those girls would be coming to church way back when by themselves. And when I started coming, it was because I had to be. Mike guilt me into it,
Randy had to be
He does
dragged.
that.
Yeah. But
Pushed
over
by a couple people.
time, I mean, those girls get tired of hearing me now. I get to go see my friends. Let's go to church, boys. So I think my attitude's changed from back then to now, that I don't have an argument if I say we're going to church, or even tonight. I mean, the only argument I have is Hannah's is like, I only got to see you for 10 minutes. Well, you'll see me all weekend. I'll be right back. I promise. Well, I'm going to wait up for you. No, you won't. We all know we're going to stay here and talk. But at the end of the day, I don't have that argument yet. And I can't truly answer that question because I think most of the time, if we're not wrestling, if we're not doing something with the kids, we're here anyway. And we've never had an issue with any kid saying, I don't want to go tonight. But you also know my daughter, too. If she's not here, there's probably a good reason why.
There's a valid reason.
Yeah. So I think she enjoys thoroughly coming up here, doing all the stuff she can possibly do. Hannah, see your daughter, or pick on Wyatt or whatever, or Kobe. I mean, I think she lives for that. I don't know, but to honestly answer that question, I haven't made it there yet. But
Daniel, I think that
I see myself reversed around because I want to be here now. Back then it was like, God, Mike, leave me alone.
I think looking back, I shared earlier about Philip calling me a hypocrite, and I think maybe you touched on a point that may very well been because I was so busy in the church and doing so much stuff in the church that I just probably wasn't representing Christ in my day-to-day walk. I didn't cuss, I didn't smoke, I didn't drink, I didn't all those things that you just didn't do. But he probably didn't see where I was getting any kind of growth because I was just like your dad, preparing for Sunday school, visiting. I didn't bring all my kids all those things, but if it was a worship service, they went to church Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night. And until they were about 12 or 13, they wanted to go to church. It was something they looked forward to. It was
Same area.
at 14 and older is when they started getting that, I don't really want to go. They wanted to stay up late. They tried to plan to spend the night someplace on Saturday night at a friend's house. Because
We'll be there to pick you up to get you to church.
That is,
What are you talking about? You ain't got no friends. I'm your friend.
Just like Daniel did with the lock-in. If one of my children had friends over Saturday night, they went to church. That was understood. If they stayed the next Saturday night, they went to church with us on Sunday, and their parents had to understand that as well. Or they just have to come get their kids late Saturday night because that was kind of. But I think maybe if I look back in reflection, maybe that's why he saw me as a hypocrite, just because although I was active, I was so busy working in church, I wasn't working for the Lord, and he probably saw that.
Right?
Because they'll see through you. They'll definitely see through you.
Because I think that's the one thing you got to remember: the priorities. It's God, family, then the church, right? Because this didn't even exist back when Jesus was preaching and talking. There was no buildings and committees and Wednesday night Bible studies and none of that. It was
podcast.
Yeah, it was mostly just your family, and maybe
No
you got
committees?
no committees. Maybe you got. Weird. Well, the Pharisees and the Sadducees, they had committees. I didn't mean there was no committees. Sorry, there was committees. Jesus was not happy with them, apparently, if you read the book. But it was mostly families. It was mostly local communities. It was just getting together. Hey, let's get together. There's even discussions in there about, hey, eat your dinner before you come, or have the fellowship together. That's what it was about. These buildings are something that we created to add structure to it because we love structure. Oh, we love just putting things in boxes and putting it together and organizing it in timelines.
Who is we?
Humans, as just humans. We love to do stuff like
If
that.
we don't have structure, it all goes down.
No, I mean, like some of the best memories I have going to church was meeting in the garage of the pastor's house, because we didn't have a building. We didn't have that. We had family, friends. We met together. He preached. We sang in his garage. That's where we lose that sight of, I need to do this, and I have to go here, and we have to do this committee. I got to be on this, and I think Daniel. I mean, I really do. I mean, my personal opinion is that relationship with Jesus needs to be number one.
Yes.
And you said that it goes God, and then goes your family. Your family's second, right? And then comes the church. And sometimes we forget that as parents, and sometimes we get so busy with church that right now, like I've said this before, is we say yes to something, we say no to another thing. So what are we saying no to sometimes when we get so busy with that? I think. I mean, I can't. I mean, you're right. I mean, that's where it needs to be. Is God's number one, family, and then the church.
Yep. And I think I want to say that that's probably where we should leave it for tonight, gentlemen, because you might not be aware of this, but we've already been doing this for 2 hours. We should probably put a pin in it.
So I'll say my last quote here, and then you guys can be. There's no such thing as a perfect parent, so just be a real one.
Good one to end it on. Right
That's
there.
weird. I thought that was perfect.
In your own eyes.
I'm just playing.
You're perfect from way over there.
From a certain distance.
Hey, so we hope we answered some questions that you might have had. Hope we had some wisdom shared to you.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Mike,
Thank you
definitely
for
for
having me,
coming and sharing your wisdom with us and with the listeners. Randy, I'm going to ask, since you're back, if you'll close us in prayer.
Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this day. Thank you for dying on the cross for sins, Lord. Thank you for showing us the love and the mercy you do. I just want to thank you for this podcast, and hopefully you can reach out to someone in need for it. I just want to ask that you just watch over us and watch over our families and be with us. Heal the sick in your way. And Lord, I just want to thank you for each one of these guys here. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you for listening to Spiritual Debriefing, a podcast supported by First Baptist Church Hiwasse. Please like and subscribe to the podcast so you can be notified when we post new episodes, as well as check out our past episodes. We'll be posting new podcasts every other Thursday. You can follow us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. If you have questions you'd like us to answer, comments, or feedback on the podcast, please contact us through our social media or email us at dmeadows@fbchiwasse.com. Thank you, and we hope God blesses your day.